Yeah, I have a few, although quite a few of them have been addressed already. On the cable TV fund, just to confirm, with the open PO for 30,000 for the box van, then which I understand the intention is for that to be purchased and invoiced during January.
Right, it got delayed.
Right. So that will essentially draw the cable TV fund down to about 44,000.
Yes, sir.
Okay, that's one. I would just point out that that was 120,000 this summer. I think we covered this part of it. The analysis that you had provided us, you had indicated that you anticipated about 300,000 in open POs, and in operating we ended up with about 509,000. And slicing through most of it, I can account for the majority of it, which is pretty much all I'll talk about with the Winnicott Road intersection, with those two POs. There's 41,305 for Winnicott Road intersection engineering with Hoyle and Tanner with a PO date of December 6th. I have a concern with us spending more money going forward from 12/6 on the intersection where the voters haven't approved it.
Okay, that was just a reissue. The original PO was for $48,000, and it wasn't getting reduced. It was set up similar to the engineer the road. So what I'm saying is that we had Hoyle Tanner has in essence a PO for $48,000. They spent $6,000. This is just a reissue. I voided the original one and I reissued. So this actually is a 2011 PO that's been reissued in 12. And this is the differential between what we set up at 48 and that's what we talk about in the warrant article.
Okay.
So it's
how
the
much
same number.
How much is available to spend on that PO going forward?
$41,305.
Okay. And my point is, I would hope that we spend almost no money on that until the vote is taken.
It's on hold.
Okay.
Yeah, we're not spending anything.
We're not spending anything.
That's fine. My next one relates to the $100,000 PO related to the sewer repairs.
Yep.
And I have concern with that, and I just want to read the section of the municipal budget law related to lapse of appropriations, and it kind of is the same point on a bigger number as Ben was making on the employee testing or whatever. All appropriations shall lapse at the end of the fiscal year, and any unexpended portion thereof shall not be expended without further appropriation unless, okay? And going to this $100,000 PO, I can only see one line that could pertain to that because most of them relate to different types of funds, capital reserve funds. And this says, the amount has, prior to the end of that fiscal year, which would be December 31st, become encumbered by a legally enforceable obligation created by contract or otherwise to any person for the expenditure of that amount. It doesn't sound like we've got a legally enforceable obligation on that $100,000. So therefore, I don't see how we can encumber that $100,000. So, in my opinion, that $100,000 should not go forward because I don't believe that, based on my interpret of the statute, and this has been discussed several times since I've been a selectman, and the understanding that I just articulated is the way it was discussed before. And I think the same thing applies to Ben's. Which one was that, Ben? It was small. It was about 4,500.
There was something in the police department for testing.
Right. So, I mean, I don't, to be honest with you, I don't have, I understand the idea behind, trying to take that $100,000 and put it aside for the sewer, because I think we are going to have to spend some money on sewer if, in fact, the warrant article is approved. But I just don't see how we can do it.
Mr. Chairman, can I
Yeah.
make one? I think we had talked about some number for Lafayette Road, and I don't think we necessarily said that it was going to be dependent upon whether the intersection was approved. This is if I understand it, it's as a result of the camera work that was done late summer, early fall, and there were two areas that Public Works said were in very bad condition, and I think we talked about this at that time and said we should repair those irrespective of what happens to the...
I agree with that, but my point, Ben, is in order, it indicates the amount has, prior to the end of that fiscal year, become encumbered by a legally enforceable obligation created by contract or otherwise to any person for the expenditure. If that's what we wanted to do, then back in December, we should have figured out what we wanted done and entered into a contract with an individual. We didn't do that.
Well, but I think we're talking about now how pure we will be as far as these things. I think for probably for at least 10 years, if not longer, we have issued a PO which has been, which has been done in December, and we've encumbered the funds in that direction. So that's the way we've done it. I'm not sure if we can change the rules.
I'm just suggesting that either I'm suggesting that we comply with the statute. That's all I am suggesting.
That's what I was trying to point out earlier, Mr. Chairman.
And I don't, to be quite honest with you, if this was a $500 or a $4,000 expenditure, I'm not sure I would have made a big issue of it, but it's $100,000. So that's my opinion, and let me continue along with my points, and we can ultimately decide how we're going to handle that. In terms of the over expenditure, and Mike pointed out police, there's also a substantial over expenditure in DPW, and if I look at DPW as one account, in other words, it's under expended by $22,000 in the highway end of it, and it's over expended by $125,000 in municipal sanitation. That's overspent by $103,000. I don't believe that you can overspend a line item at the level of the warrant without the approval of the governing body. Certainly, we've had a lot of discussions relative to sublines, and I'm in complete agreement with you as far as sublines. But 3210 says if changes arise during the year following the annual meeting that make it necessary to expend more than the amount appropriated for a specific purpose, and it defines a specific purpose later to the level of lines within the warrant, as you pointed out, and I agree, the governing body may transfer to that appropriation an unexpended balance remaining in some other appropriation, and as you pointed out, we haven't gone over on the bottom line, $32,414. I believe that on these accounts that are negative, that there needs to be a motion and a vote such that those lines are not negative.
Okay,
based
so
on
he agrees,
3210.
that's what he believes. What do you believe?
Actually, I believe that when you look at the actual expenditures, we're under-expended. When you compare the $24,290,000, that's the actual expenditures compared to the budget. We actually did not expend 100%. We're now dealing in the encumbrance levels, which is part of the adjustments that we're talking about. That the $500,000 encumbrance actually is going to be worked through the undesignated fund balance. The actual expenditures are the line that says actual. So we haven't really overexpended as many as it looks like here. If you were to pull that $100,000 encumbrance out of the list that I've suggested, that number you're just now down to $2,000.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand.
And if you run down the percent used, executive is over by 2%, personnel administration is 2%, building is 9%, and we know what that is. Emergency management is it's $100. Highways and streets, but when you look at the two highways, the two public works, it's at 93 and 97, and basically patriotic purposes is over by $400. I'm saying that you would not really need to do adjustments to the budget because you didn't really overexpend the budget. What you are now looking at is putting in the encumbrances, and that is a budgeted item. That becomes a budget for next year, just as it did when you did the 2011 encumbrances.